I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. My name is Paul. You have found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality where we are building a liberty machine. We've got a great show for you. We've got a ton of news to get to. We're going to talk just here in a minute a little bit about the deep state and everything that's going on with that. At the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with Joe Sixpack once again. He's the author of a book called Socialism Sucks, Your Money from Your Pocket. So that's always good. Also, we have, you remember a couple of days ago, well, I guess what is today, Wednesday? So on Monday, I told you how on Friday, the Arkansas General Assembly met, or a derivative of them met, the Arkansas Legislative Council, and they decided to hold up a request by Governor Asa Hutchinson for $1 million to go to regulating the Buffalo River watershed when it comes to best practices. The government's recommendation upon landowners for best practices when it comes to their land surrounding the Buffalo River watershed. Of course, this all has to do with, all starting with C&H Hog Farms, a organization business that we're now buying. The taxpayers are now buying them out because they got a permit and they complied with everything the government told them to do, and the government still didn't want to let them operate. So, I mean, the government, I think, was clearly liable there, and that's why they're buying them out, and there's a settlement, essentially. And so I went back in, and I decided to go listen to, because they're streaming online and everything, so I decided to go listen to what exactly was said during that meeting, and I will tell you this. I don't think the newspaper, when they were quoting Senator Missy Irvin, I don't think the quotes by themselves do it justice. I think you need to hear it for yourself. We have that audio for you coming up here next hour. And we're also going to be talking with, coming up at 7:33, we've got our monthly economic update and jobs numbers from Arkansas economist Dr. Michael Packo. Sat down with him yesterday to kind of go over some numbers that came out a few days ago. He's got this great blog site, by the way, called the Arkansas Economist. Check that out if you want to see what we're going to be talking about, but you can go ahead and get it in written form. So we have all that and much, much more coming up on the program today. Just a few highlights. I'm going to give you my bird's eye view is what I think is going on nationally right now. And we'll just do it via the headlines, okay? In the past, if you were listening to the mainstream media, they would inform you multiple times that this concept of the deep state was a fairy tale. It was fiction. It did not exist. There's even some of you out there, who kind of maybe lean left that don't want to believe that there are unelected bureaucrats who are in the intelligence community who refuse to honor our constitutional republic and actually serve the president that the civilian population elects. And the deep state's going, because they apparently are so corrupt and have a lot to lose. We don't know what they've done, but I believe they've done something, or they wouldn't be reacting like an immune system trying to attack a virus, which is what they see President Trump as. Who knew that President Trump was actually that this is what draining the swamp looks like, where you send the establishment, you send the entire town of Washington, if not parts of the globe, into convulsions because you actually are changing something. A bunch of stuff. Stuff we can see and stuff we can't see behind the scenes. And they don't like it. Headline. Go ahead, Joe. New York Times editorial board member. Trump is right. The deep state is alive and well. We now have the New York Times admitting that the deep state is real, but they are circling the wagons for them. They're running cover for them. Quote, this is what they say, quote, the deep state, quote, they are not the resistance. They are not a cabal. They are public servants. Let us now praise these not silent heroes. That's from Michelle Cottle. Okay. So you're telling me that they're illegal spying, lying to FISA courts, setting up George Papadopoulos with Western intelligence agents? It was all their patriotic duty. That will be their only defense as John Durham, the U.S. Attorney from Connecticut, indicts and indicts and indicts. Next headline, Breitbart.com again. Hans von Sikowski. Headline, FBI, CIA fear criminal prosecutions over Durham's Spygate probe. This is, again, from just the first headline, or the first paragraph here. Employees of intelligence agencies may be very scared and very worried of U.S. Attorney John Durham's investigation of the origins of the Obama administration's surveillance of Donald Trump's presidential campaign. By the way, do you remember when Donald Trump said he was being surveilled and everybody laughed at him when he first found out? Under James Comey's former directorship of the FBI, the federal government surveilled Trump's political associates as early as 2015. And now the deep state, as they go down for this, if they go down, they're going to claim they did it because they were patriots. Give me a break. That's why yesterday in closed-door testimony, next article, we have a diplomat claiming that Trump wanted Ukraine aid held until Zelensky announced Biden investigation. The Democrats are taking this, saying we finally got it. We have a quid pro quo. This is Stephanie Grisham, though, the White House press secretary, pushed back. President Trump has done nothing wrong. This is a coordinated smear campaign. We know it is. The polls are now starting to show that the American people agree that it is. In the transcripts, though, of his opening remarks prepared, this is what he said, quote, according to Tim Morrison from the White House National Security Council, President Trump told Ambassador to the European Union, Gordon Sondland, that he was not asking for a quid pro quo, but President Trump did insist that Ukrainian President Zelensky go to a microphone and say he's opening investigations of Biden in 2016 election interference, and that President Zelensky should want to do this himself. Folks, Joe Biden gave $1 billion. Go ahead, go to the YouTube video, the first YouTube video we have. Go to this, just real quick. Let's play the tape.
And a commitment from Poroshenko, they would take action against the state prosecutor, and they didn't. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting $1 billion. I said, you're not getting $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here, and I think it was, 6 hours? I looked, I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Oh, son of a got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
Well, it just so happens that the general prosecutor was...
Yeah, we've heard it a million times, but folks, what happened to the $1 billion that he did give for the firing of the prosecutor that was investigating the company? His son was sitting on the board making $50,000 to $80,000 a month. What happened to that $1 billion? It went to a bunch of corrupt Ukrainians and a bunch of other people that we don't really know about. The president's like, you know what? Don't know if we want to continue giving Ukraine aid when the Democrat Party is using Ukraine to spy on me. I'm not sure if I want to keep funding this little operation when the Ukraine was what was responsible, where there's a guy that's gone to prison for helping Hillary Clinton get dirt on my campaign. I'm not so sure I want to continue giving you guys money. So can you guys stop that? Please. Oh, and by the way, what happened with the server in CrowdStrike in 2016, which is the real ass that nobody wants to talk about because it exposes the Democrats as doing more shady stuff. Because why didn't they let the FBI look at their servers that were supposedly hacked by Russia? Telephone number 870-275-9799. So in the midst of all of this yesterday, the President of the United States decided to tweet that this impeachment inquiry is a lynching. Other headline we have, Joe, left thinks lynching is okay. Now, this is just a little bit of a flashback here, because when Bill Clinton was impeached, the Democrats called this a lynching many, many, many times. Matter of fact, did you know that Joe Biden did? And, of course, this is just a giant double standard. Remember the outrage when CNN Democrats invoked lynching? Scrolling down here, get to this Twitter video of Joe Biden. No, we not have it here? Maybe it's... Yeah, I think it's this Fox News article. Yeah, so Joe Biden has come out and he's apologized because back during the Clinton impeachment, he actually referred to this as a lynching. Can you believe that? Yeah, right there. Go ahead. Scroll down, Joe. You almost had it right there. Click play on this. I want you to hear this.
It seems to me that the process is being demeaned. And I have great faith in Henry Hyde, but old Henry better get on the job, because unless he figures out how to corral this, no matter what happens, even if the president should be impeached, history is going to question whether or not this was just a partisan lynching or whether or not it was something that, in fact, met the standard, the very high bar that was set by the founders as to what
now we love the founders and the high
offense.
bar,
Do you
don't we?
believe the
Stop.
House of Representatives with the current...
Former Vice President Joe Biden has now offered an apology for that comment, but he's still criticizing the president for using it. Now, let me tell you something that you may not hear anywhere else. Maybe you will. I don't know. I haven't listened to what other people are saying. The President of the United States is playing the media beautifully here. Why do you think he used the word lynching? Joe, why do you think Donald Trump used the word lynching? Do you think when he used the word lynching to compare this impeachment process, do you think he knew that the Democrats would lose their mind and he would break the internet? Do you think he knew? He knew. Oh, he knew. He used it specifically. Do you know why? Go to the next article, Joe. Jussie Smollett, otherwise known as Juicy Smollett. His case is now going to proceed according to a federal judge. They tried to overthrow this, or tried to get it, they didn't want to go forward, but a federal judge ruled yesterday that the lawsuit against actor Jussie Smollett, or Jussie Smollett, remember the two Nigerians? First it was two white guys wearing MAGA hats with rope and bleach, and then he paid them to do it. It was a racial false flag in this country because I'm a gay black man. Remember that? Everyone said it was a modern-day lynching. Remember that? Something tells me we're going to find out a lot more about Mr. Smollett and who put him up to do this. You think he just did this by himself? The official story was that Jussie Smollett did what he did, faked it, because he was upset with his low salary, a meager, $50,000 an episode or something like that? That was the official story for why he did what he did. What if it was something more, though? I mean, I'm just speculating, but what if it was more coordinated than that? What if it was actually a conspiracy to manipulate the media and to stoke racial tensions even more? It's certainly something to consider, and if anybody knows the truth, I would suspect the President of the United States knows. He used the word lynching on purpose. That much I know. And the media and the Democrats, they took the bait hook, line, and sinker, and now they're diving as deep as they can with it. That, ladies and gentlemen, will be very interesting to see what happens. So that right there, all of those national headlines, they paint a pretty interesting picture, don't they? On the way in this morning, as I was listening to the mainstream media, like I always do, it was an onslaught against the president like I've never seen. I mean, even in this anti-Trump era, if you were just waking up for the first time in like 5-6 years, you would think that this country was on the brink of total collapse based on their reporting. It is relentless deception. It is relentless projection. They are projecting the very thing they're guilty of onto the president. And this morning, I think it was the quid pro quo. Oh, we've got new proof of a quid pro quo. And it was also Syria. Oh, Syria is universally condemned. Can you believe he's pulling out of Syria still? By the way, the American people want that. They've wanted it for a long time. Oh, can you believe he abandoned our allies? Listen, you know what? We've been in the Middle East for 19 years now. The Democrats have wanted to get out, supposedly, but apparently they were just saying that, just like they claim to want to actually fix the DACA children, the Dreamers. But then when they're given the opportunity to do so, they don't, because they don't want President Trump to get the credit for it. They're a bunch of liars and hypocrites, like blatantly so. I mean, we're all hypocrites to one degree or another because we're not perfect. But my goodness, it's getting ridiculous. And I think the American people, I really do, I think they are aware. They are so much more aware than the media think. The media, for some reason, after 2016, they refused to do any sort of reflection about how wrong they were. They just doubled down with Robert Mueller. They doubled down telling the people that, okay, we're going to get him, we're going to impeach him. And yet, he's still the president. And they know Hillary Clinton. Did you hear that Hillary Clinton said that he's got to be impeached because he can't win? I'm sorry, he can't lose. He actually said something. I saw a tweet about that. I'm going to have to look into that. Anyway, we're going to take a 1-minute break, and we're going to be back here in just a moment. But before we do, I want to tell you about Conduit for Commerce. All right, now, so here's the thing, folks. And I was telling this to the great folks of the Arkansas County Republicans last night. But if you are a taxpayer or you're a business owner, well, we're all taxpayers, right? The fact of the matter is government rarely gives the people a break, whether you're a business or an individual. Big government politicians, they are always wanting more of your money. Their solutions seem to always be, well, we need to get more money from the people. If you want to support the work that Conduit News is doing, we're bringing you the truth, then I would strongly recommend that you consider giving less money to the government that never stops overspending and overtaxing us by giving a tax-deductible donation to Conduit for Commerce, the premier organization in Arkansas that never stops promoting small business, limited government. Go to conduitforcommerce.org right now. Click on Support Our Cause. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Click on Support Our Cause, and you can give monthly, you can give one time, but the main thing you can do is give the government that's using your tax dollars to grow less money and give the people fighting for your values here in Arkansas more. Conduitforcommerce.org. Click Support Our Cause. Back in 1 minute.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown 9-fold, It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Don't trust China. I'm sorry, it's still one of my favorite clips. I can't play it because I haven't bleeped out the a-hole part of the clip. But there's this Hong Kong protester who's being asked on camera, like, okay, you got a message for the United States, and he goes, Donald Trump, don't trust China, and it's it's pretty viral out there. Welcome back to the show, folks. We really appreciate it. Again, I want to remind you, coming up next, we're going to be talking to the author of the book, Socialism Sucks Your Money from Your Pocket. Again, Joe Sixpack will be back with us. We've interviewed him once before. It's been a little while, but I want to have him back on to talk about a few things. Socialism, here's my take on it. In light of the fact that the left is actually embracing an entirely new, the Democrat Party embracing an entirely new way of life. That's what you have to understand. They are advocating Bernie, Ocasio-Cortez, and Nancy Pelosi's going along with them. Chuck Schumer's going along with them. They're advocating for an entirely new way of life for Americans by advocating for socialism. And I think that point gets completely lost sometimes. What is going on in China is a product of what comes out of socialism and communism. Period. End of sentence. There's no discussion. The 20th century is crystal clear about what happens when the state takes control. When the state disarms the people of their guns, for example, then they disarm the people of their rights. It's crystal clear every single time. And so for us to, in light of the fact we look at what's going on in Venezuela, the complete debacle that is, and we have the media and leftists promoting this new lifestyle, this new way to govern ourselves called socialism, which is essentially just two wolves and a sheep deciding what to have for dinner. And our home state of Arkansas, in light of all this, when we are having a very big debate about the future of our country, because make no mistake about it, if the president were to some reason lose, if he were to for some reason lose in 2020, the Democrat Party and the socialism that it's on its way will be absolutely life-changing. I really believe that. So our own home state is trying to bring communist China here. And I know I continue to talk about this, but it's really, really a stark contrast from what our national government is trying to do, which is trying to stop the rise of China and the attempted supplanting of the United States of America. And I think we see it, and I think there's a lot of people in the Arkansas General Assembly that see it. But are they saying anything about it publicly? Not quite. But you know who did say something publicly about it? The President and the Vice President of the United States. So during the breaks for our online audience, and you can check us out at YouTube, please subscribe to the program on YouTube. Please click the little bell to receive notifications. You can also watch this right now at facebook.com/Conduit News. For our online audience during our breaks here, we're playing you this video of Mike Pence. And you contrast it with the governor. In this video, the Governor Hutchinson and all the meetings he's had with Chinese party officials, Communist Party, the Communist Chinese right here in Arkansas, announcing deal after deal after deal. By the way, this is also the video where the Secretary of Commerce, Mike Preston, claims that these Chinese representatives, he mentions a bunch of senators and reps and says, these are now your, to China, these are now your reps and senators. That's at the end of the video. Back in a minute.
In China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used an arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade. including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So, Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Li to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong province. I met with Chairman Li. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas, in Arkansas.
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Li and I met yesterday. Chairman Li indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets. As
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Here we go. Welcome back this morning. Thank you so much for being with us today and starting your day, your morning with us here. It's the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We wanted to have back on is the author of a book, Socialism Sucks, Your Money from Your Pocket. His name is Joe Sixpack. Joe, how's it going?
I'm doing well, Paul. How are you?
I'm doing good. Hey, first of all, the response to your book, I'm sure it's pretty good right now, considering this country's having this high debate right now of whether or not we want to stick with the system we got or transition to the Venezuelan-style socialism.
Yeah, I know. It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's utterly ridiculous. I guess it really boils down to that, you can vote yourself into socialism, but you have to shoot your way out of it. Only caveat there is the government's already got your guns. So it's pretty sick stuff.
Yeah, it really is sick stuff. What are your thoughts right now on the presidential race? I've got this headline here: Joe Biden struggles to reverse fall. He recently came out yesterday and apologized for using the word lynching back during the Clinton impeachment. What are your thoughts on Biden right now?
I mean, how mealy-mouthed is that? If he used the word out of context and then he, has roll it back and apologize, I mean, it just shows you a wet taco this guy is. I mean, I think 2020 is another sweep. I mean, can you imagine any of those clowns on the Democratic Party being on stage with Donald Trump? I mean, it's going to be a circus.
I think it will be a circus. I also think there's, that's why I think people maybe believe Hillary's going to get back in, but I think that would just be a redo. I mean, that I don't know what. That's why they really can't do anything but try to impeach him and remove him from office, or whether it's impeachment or 25th Amendment. That's all they've got, because I think they realize right now, I mean, he's winning. I mean, and he's going to win again.
Absolutely. You know, if Hillary, I swear to God, I hope she comes back. I will donate to her campaign. I'll throw $100. I would love her to run again.
Yeah,
it would be hilarious.
It really would. So I also have this other piece here, and this was in the news. Tulsi Gabbard fires back at the queen of warmongers, Hillary Clinton, for suggesting she's a Russian asset. You know, so Hillary's out there really. I mean, I guess everybody's a Russian asset if you're not. You know, the only one who's not a Russian asset, I guess, is Hillary. I guess, according to her.
Yeah, well, and that's so funny, because obviously it was her and Obama who were in bed with the Russians. Her selling the uranium. Obama, you know, on the open mic, tells Vlad, "I'll have more flexibility after the election." And so this is just pure projectionism, straight out of the Saul Alinsky playbook, running around accusing the opponents of doing everything that you're doing. And it's so funny that they don't realize how transparent it is. That we see right through this.
Yeah, we see projection, I think, in all levels of government. I think you see it at the national stage. You see it here in Arkansas. We see projection all the time at the state level, and then at the local level. You kind of project the very thing that you're guilty of onto your opponents. And then we have this other headline here, Joe, about Bernie Sanders is back. He's back on the campaign trail. What's I mean, now he's the first one really where he was an open socialist. He openly said, this was years ago, and people are like, okay, yeah, there's this one guy who's socialist in the Democrat Party, but that'll never take hold. It clearly has, but I don't think he has much of a chance to get the nomination at this point. What are your thoughts on that?
No, I mean, good Lord, it's like The Walking Dead. I mean, again, can you see him on stage with Trump, with his line of arguments, which is just basically free everything? There's nothing there. I mean, he gets some people at his campaigns, but look at the size and the numbers compared to what Trump pulls in. Mm-hmm. You know, and I think that's across the board with all these guys. You know, not one of them stands a chance. Not in this reality. But to your point, the socialism has increased tremendously. You know, 5 years ago, if I had said anybody in Washington was a socialist, people would laugh me out of the room and thought I was a raving nutcase. Who would ever be a socialist? But you're right. He's the guy who first stood up, and as soon as he did that, all of a sudden socialism was just all the rage among the young people.
You know, a little bit of perspective here also. And by the way, we're talking with Joe Sixpack. He's the author of this book called Socialism Sucks Your Money from Your Pocket. I mean, I guess I've been in radio now 10 years, and when I started and Obama was in office, we started criticizing his policies, people on the right, as socialism. I mean, you know, that's what we were saying. And I don't know if people remember this, but Obama's not a socialist, or Obama would even make fun of those of us on the right calling him a socialist in his speeches. And it was, you know, even back then, it wasn't that long ago that the Democrat Party was rejecting this label of socialism, and now they don't have a problem with it. And they also, by the way, some of them have come out and said, yes, we're going to take your AR-15s.
Yeah, well, that's the sneaky side. That's kind of what I try to point out in the book. It's for young people, really. It's not for people our age. It's for us to buy 4 or 5 copies and give it to our kids and have speeches. But it's the creep. And so, yes, they were doing everything that was socialist ever since the 60s. I mean, it's gone back further than that, but especially since the 60s. And the creep, if you look at how far the political spectrum has shifted, the Republicans are what the Democrats were 40 years ago. The Democrats are now the, socialist Democrats of the U.S. It's this creep, and that's really what incited me to write this book. I was out of country for 10 years. I came back, and I was blown away by how much socialism had encroached on American society.
I'm glad you brought that up. I do want to remind people, you just said you were out of country for 10 years. You came back, and it was a different country. I mean, it changed that quickly.
Yes.
It says here, this is kind of a write-up of the book, socialists are posing as teachers, they're posing as professors, and they're brainwashing young people into believing socialism is the answer, aren't they?
Absolutely. I don't call them schools anymore. I call them G6. government socialist indoctrination camps. And the height of the political correctness in the schools is just absolutely astounding.
Mm-hmm. So if you've got so if you've got a kid, all right, if you got a child who's kind of, you know, a lot of people are more liberal minded when they're younger. You think this would be a good book for them? That's what you're saying, that this might be a good read to figure out how, you know, hey, I mean, the title certainly is catchy for a younger audience.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the whole point. The Democrats do a great job of appealing to young people, but the Republicans, it's like they don't even care. And so I'm not necessarily pushing capitalism on kids. The real essence of it is think for yourself. Use common sense. If you look at something and you see who's benefiting from it, forget about the nice, pretty words they dress it up in. Mm-hmm. Look at who's benefiting, and you'll be able to figure out what their intentions are. That's really what's at the core of the book, pushing common sense.
Yeah. I think you're exactly right, and I always appreciate having you on, Joe. Best of luck to you, and you know, things are going to continue heating up. I mean, next year's going to be a huge year. A lot of rhetoric's going to be swirling, and I appreciate what you're doing, and keep up the good work.
I can't wait. Thank you very much. I appreciate it, Paul.
Yeah, yes,
Take
sir.
care.
So socialism sucks your money from your pocket. I mean, you can get it in paperback, or you can get it on Kindle too. I mean, it's right here in front of me. I'm looking at it right here. So it's little things like this that I feel like are a big deal. You know what I mean? I'm not suggesting that not suggesting that the book is little. What I'm saying is like every effort out there to try to educate people. I mean, that's what we're doing here at Conduit. We're trying to educate people, give them the truth. Every single effort is using your sphere of influence. When I was at the Arkansas County Republican committee last night, and as I was there, I met a gentleman there who was there to get more involved. Specifically, was there to get more involved and kind of be an activist. I mean, that's what people who are, especially people these local county committees. I mean, those are the ones that are the fundraisers. Those are the ones who are the door knockers. Those are the ones who are trying to take control of their, the reins of their government, which is the right that we still have in this country. So whether you want to write a book like Joe Sixpack, or whether you want to join your local, county committee at the Republican level to try to make sure that they actually adhere to the Republican Party. And by the way, the Republican Party platform, the power of faith in God, right? The belief that lower taxes produces economic growth. By the way, I will say this. As I was going over the Conduit for Commerce presentation, we were going over the scorecard. We're going over the reporting on what happened in the wake of the 92nd General Assembly. We are now experiencing these new laws, these tax increases, a net tax increase of $70 million in fiscal year 2020. This is news to a lot of people. It's news to a lot of people. The number one question that we were asking back in January was, are we going to be paying less money to the government as a whole? Are we going to be paying more? Or are we going to be paying the same? That was my number one question as we were researching and trying to figure out what bill's going to do what. And in the end, all you got to do is take what they passed and then take Department of Finance and Administration's own numbers, their own numbers, and then, plug it into a simple addition and subtraction equation, and there you go. Those are the numbers. Those are the government's numbers, if you add them up. And, people they weren't too happy about it. I'm going to be honest, When you actually go down the list of what the 92nd General Assembly did, by the way, it's there were some good things. But when you actually go down the list of, okay, really, they raised my cell phone fees? Yeah, they did. And, I remember it. I mean, go back to the debate. It was for 911. We got to do this for 911. Okay, all right. Okay, that's what you say. You've got to do it. You got to raise your cell phone tax because of 911. All right, we got to invest in the infrastructure. Okay. But it's still on the list of other things like increasing your water fees, right? Increasing the gas tax, having a separate vote for a half-cent sales tax. That's a new tax. I mean, it just, when you put it in a list, people that haven't heard any of this stuff, they just start scratching their head and they don't understand why there's a principle: lower taxes to produce economic growth. Well, apparently that doesn't mean necessarily like lowering the overall. Apparently that doesn't mean lowering the overall tax burden necessarily, right? It can kind of mean what you want it to mean, which I don't subscribe to that at all. Matter of fact, I got this new piece here, a new article up at Conduit for Action. You guys should check this out. New article up at conduitforaction.org right now. Legislators speak. Did 2019 bring lower or higher taxes? Literally just out minutes ago. A few weeks ago, state legislator was introducing himself to an audience. Let's see, looking for something to say, he added, and this year we passed the biggest tax reduction in Arkansas history. His voice trailed off toward the end of the sentence, and the audience sat silent. Several of the blank stares came from people right up front who knew the whole story about the tax changes in the 2019 Arkansas legislature. Did 2019 bring Arkansas big tax relief or higher overall taxes? You will want to hear the assessment given by several sitting legislators who were interviewed by me on this program, Conduit News. The campaign season begins in a few days, and state politicians will be bragging on tax cuts. That's only half the story. You need to know about not only the tax relief passed in 2019, but also the tax increases. Spoiler alert, because of the combined Arkansas tax changes this year, you will have less money in your pocket for Christmas. Taking one tax measure and ignoring the rest is a deception. On February 19th, Governor Asa Hutchinson signed into law his plan to cut Arkansas's top income tax rate. It has been described as the biggest tax cut in Arkansas history. The tax cut will be phased in and will become effective in future years. It was such big news that the words biggest tax cut in history has made it into the talking points of most state politicians. It would have been a great story and would have been a great talking point if the legislature had gone home February 19th of this year instead of spending most of the rest of the legislative session passing the governor's plan to raise other taxes. As for tax relief, the session brought not only a future income tax cut in the highest bracket, but also an annual $25 increase in the homestead property tax credit, which is a good thing. That's a tax credit. But then you get to the bad news. The legislature passed the internet sales tax, the gas and diesel tax, the cell phone tax, the water tax. They increased taxes on cigarette papers because of that medical marijuana. You know, people are rolling their own. And then the legislature is proposing, let's see, on your 2020 ballot, they're proposing a permanent half-cent sales tax. So anyway, go there right now, and we've got this linked up. If you want to hear the impression of the session audio, by the way, you can check that out right there. See that? There's the YouTube video. That's up at conduitforaction.org. That's the impression of the session, video or audio of all the interviews I did with legislators. That was one of the things I did this summer. I was interviewing probably a couple legislators a week. And my question was this. So you don't necessarily have to take our word for it. I mean, it's the truth. But go listen to the legislators that were on this program. And, you know, there's a lot of them. I don't know what the exact number is, but we interviewed a ton of them. And you know what we asked them? Are the people paying more or less after the session? And most of them, some of them maybe kind of give ambiguous answers, but most of them say, yeah, we're going to be paying more. Or they say, yeah, it's possible. Well, they don't really know. Check it out. It's up right now, conduitforaction.org. We're going to take a break. We're going to reset here. Coming up, you got to hear this audio at the top of the next hour. We're going to go into the Arkansas Legislative Council meeting from last Friday. We're going to bring you some very interesting audio. And a lot of people have asked me, why do you think the legislature stood up to the governor and is holding up his $1 million that he wants for the regulations for the Buffalo River watershed? Why do you think they've done this? Well, I'll speculate on that as well, coming up at 7:05. Don't go anywhere. Back here in just a moment.
Has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Lee and I met yesterday. Chairman Lee indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China. It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas and also
money, power, prestige, essence, available now from aristocrats serving Arkansas. From Zenata Rhino Collection, the fragrance of backroom deals, nepotism, the aroma of higher taxes, subliminal deception, deep state, ace. Made right here in Arkansas by a taxpayer-funded Chinese factory. Every bottle carefully crafted for you. Gender neutral. Nothing says aristocrat like Essence of Bureaucrat. Essence of Bureaucrat by Asa.
Available now in the Marble Palace gift shop.
Paul Harrell parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Joe, real quick here, what do you think? This is a story that I didn't even know happened. I missed it. It fell through the cracks. What do you think the largest Christian denomination is in the state of Arkansas? What would you say the largest Christian denomination is?
In Arkansas?
Yeah, in Arkansas. What would you say?
Real quick, someone's messed up my mic. Gotta fix it.
Okay. It probably was me.
Nah.
What do you think?
Probably, yeah, I would probably have to say Baptist.
Okay. I think so too.
Just because I used to be part of the Catholic Church. I've been to quite a few.
Now that's when
ones.
you were living in Mississippi, though, right?
No, for the first. So I moved to Arkansas when I was 12.
Okay.
11.
So
I was the Catholic Church. I was 18.
Okay. So So you think? I think so too. So I think that's why this is relevant. That's all I'm saying. So I didn't realize this, but I apparently back when the Southern Baptist Convention met in June, okay, there was a controversial resolution. Now this, according to onenewsnow.com, a controversial resolution passed in the closing moments of the Southern Baptist Convention, this again back in June, and it reportedly continued to royal discussion among members of America's largest Protestant denomination, not only Arkansas, so America. Some are taking issue with the way it was passed. Some are saying it elevates dangerous Marxist theories above Scripture. In the mind of its original author, it was called Resolution 9, passed by a raising of hands at the Southern Baptist Convention gathered in Birmingham, Alabama. Again, this was back in June. Was meant to be a stinging rebuke of the social justice concepts of critical race theory and intersectionality. But when it passed in a hurry at the very end of the two-day convention, it left many who voted for it confused and wondering what happened. By the way,
sounds like the legislator.
Exactly right. That's what I was saying. It was like, welcome to the club. Welcome to the club, everybody.
Things get pushed through in the last second for no reason.
So that was back in June. Now, here is the Truth Matters conference that's put on by very well-respected evangelical pastor John MacArthur, okay? They had that last week, all right? And he came out and specifically talked about what happened at the Southern Baptist Convention in June. Again, from Steve Jordal over at onenewsnow.com. One of the most respected pastors in evangelical Christianity says the Southern Baptist Convention has lost its way and isn't likely to get it back. When Southern California's Grace Community Church held its Truth Matters conference last week, Pastor John MacArthur delivered a bleak assessment of the Southern Baptist Convention. Quote, when the Southern Baptists met in June and passed Resolution 9, and they said intersectionality and critical race theory are useful tools in interpreting the Bible, that was a watershed moment for the entire movement. Critical race theory teaches people can be grouped by different oppressions like racism or gender bias, and intersectionality says all oppressed groups are interdependent and subject to overlapping systems of oppression. Specifically, the Southern Baptist Convention said critical race theory and intersectionality can be useful tools in interpreting Scripture, and that's a problem according to John MacArthur. Quote, if the culture has the right to interpret the Bible, they will interpret the Bible and liberalism will take over. This is liberalism not in the traditional political spectrum, it's liberalism in a theological perspective. This is, he goes on, this is an evidence that they are allowing the culture to interpret the Scripture. He continued, this is not a minor issue. When you literally overturn the clear teaching of Scripture to empower people who want power, now that's key there. When you literally overturn the clear teaching of Scripture to empower people who want power, you've given up biblical authority, he said. I guess that in some ways it's remarkable that they lasted as long as they did when all other denominations have been gone 30, 40, 50 years when it comes to inerrancy, meaning the idea that Scripture is inerrant. Anyway, it's quite interesting. I mean, so I saw this piece. I didn't even know about this Resolution 9 thing. So, I mean, let me know what you think. If sound off on Facebook, sound off give me a text message, if you have a thought on that.
I might say something controversial here, Paul, but guess what?
What?
When it comes to interpreting Scripture,
yeah,
your race means nothing.
Thank you, Joe. That's truth. We're going to be right back here in just a moment. One more hour on your way, or on its way here next.
Talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leader stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015 and said that his country had, and I quote, no intention to militarize the South China Sea. Today, Beijing has deployed advanced anti-ship and anti-air missiles atop an archipelago of military bases constructed on artificial islands. China's aggression was on display this week when a Chinese naval vessel came within 45 yards of the USS Decatur as it conducted freedom of navigation operations in the South China Sea, forcing our ship to quickly maneuver to avoid collision. Despite such reckless harassment, the United States Navy will continue to fly, sail, and operate wherever international law allows and our national interests demand. We will not be intimidated, and we will not stand down.
And we'll be calling on multiple prospects in China, as well as continuing our relationship with Sun Paper in Shandong province.
In recent years, China has taken a sharp U-turn toward control and oppression of its own people. Today, China has built an unparalleled surveillance state, and it's growing more expansive and intrusive, often with the help of U.S. technology. And when it comes to religious freedom, a new wave of persecution is crashing down on Chinese Christians, Buddhists, and Muslims. Last month, Beijing shut down one of China's largest underground churches. Across the country, authorities are tearing down crosses, burning Bibles, and imprisoning believers. And Beijing has now reached a deal with the Vatican that gives the avowedly atheist Communist Party a direct role in appointing Catholic bishops. For China's Christians, these are desperate times.
So, do you like him as a candidate?
I think he's brought a lot to the table. It's not my message. You know, I worry about the party in terms of expanding our base and what the message does to our recruitment of Hispanics, outreach to minorities. And so you've got to worry about the fall election and whether this is a message that's going to carry in Michigan, Ohio, and Florida, and those states that we need to carry.
The American people deserve to know. In response to the strong stand that President Trump has taken, Beijing is pursuing a comprehensive and coordinated campaign to undermine support for the president, our agenda, and our nation's most cherished ideals.
I think you've got to listen to what he says and how he conducts himself. And I don't know that he would be that different from what he is now in negotiating with Vladimir Putin. So,
you think that's a good thing or a bad thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing. You know, we need people who, in the presidency, that understand how the world works, understands that there's a time for bluster and there's a time for reason.
The Chinese Communist Party is rewarding or coercing American businesses, movie studios, universities, think tanks, scholars, journalists, and local, state, and federal officials.
And then, Chairman, you'll look out in the audience and you'll see multiple members of the governor's cabinet. We're also here to support you. You'll see multiple members of the state legislative assembly. They're here to support you, and specifically Senator Caldwell, Senator Ingram, Representative Murdoch, Representative Hollowell. These are your senators and your representatives now. You call on them and they're going to help you, guarantee it. And Senator English, I saw you out there too. Thank you for being here as well.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools, as well as propaganda, to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome. This is hour number 2. Congratulations, you found the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with Arkansas economist Dr. Michael Packo about the jobs numbers, the employment numbers that came out a few days ago. And for more on that, you can go to thearkansaseconomist.com. All right, so we talked about this on Thursday, or maybe it was Wednesday of last week. We got word that Senator Terry Rice was holding up the governor's request for $1 million in funding for the Buffalo River conservation effort, which, from what I can tell, is more regulation. I mean, that's what I can tell. I mean, I know they're saying that it's not, or some people are saying that, but this is going to be more regulation on landowners around the Buffalo River. And it has to do with C&H Hog Farm. We are now paying some, we're now paying something like, what is it? Is it $6 million, over $6 million to C&H Hog Farms? Is that right? To buy their business because they got a permit from the state and then did everything they were supposed to do to raise pigs, and a bunch of activists, some of them linked to George Soros-funded groups out of California. They said, well, you can't do this. You're going to pollute the Buffalo River. Okay. So now the state of Arkansas is buying them out. All right, we got it. Well, so now there's a movement to basically not do anything around the Buffalo River that might potentially pollute. And a lot of activists are worried about this. So the governor sets up this Buffalo River Conservation Committee and asks for $1 million. Allegedly, there's another $1 million out there in private funding that's now in jeopardy if the state doesn't authorize the money. So last week, Senator Terry Rice said, you know, I'm gonna wait till we get to the Legislative Council on Friday. So on Friday, the Legislative Council met and discussed this issue with Secretary of Agriculture, who was before the committee. And I have a little bit of audio for you and video. Let's just kind of take it up. So here is Senator Terry Rice talking about this issue, whether or not to give the governor the $1 million he wants for the Buffalo River regulations. Listen.
Stated in the Pierce Subcommittee that day, it's a culmination of a number of things that have caused concern, especially in what I call the small animal ag community. The ones that I'm familiar with have 1, 2, 4 poultry houses, maybe a couple of hog houses or something like that. In the governor's letter versus the Department of Agriculture letter, the governor's letter is asking for $1 million, and I am not against helping Buffalo River or any other rivers on keeping clean water and all. But it says in there These funds will be used to support grants and projects within the Buffalo River watershed, including but not limited to the following: voluntary best management practices for farmers and landowners, improvements of waste water and septic systems for cities and counties within the watershed, and reduction of sediment runoff from unpaved roads within the watershed. I don't have any problem with those specified things, but the including but not limited to, with the background, as I mentioned, of the C&H hog farm, which this legislature approved and I supported, because of where we were. We had a small business that had not been found of violating regulations or been fined or whatever. It is just because of the excess resistance and possibilities down the road that brought to where we're at today, and hopefully that'll be resolved. At my understanding, we're in the last part of that they're shutting down. But it is the things, as I discussed with you, that are small.
Oh, we have a buffering issue.
Farms, animal farms, are concerned with. And while you're Secretary of Ag, and I have no doubt you're going to express ag interest, there's a lot of difference between big farming operations, row crop operations of thousands of acres, which is part of your purview, and the little guy that can't even take off from his two-house chicken farm to come to Little Rock to be engaged. And as I told you also, it's not covered in western Arkansas. It may be covered in the Little Rock and northwest Arkansas DMGAS, but in west central Arkansas, they don't get the news we get down there, so they rely on their elected officials.
Wow.
Just the concerns from accumulation of events on the reg change, extensive oversight and testing without violation, the accusations without factual substance is enough cost and aggravation to put some small farmers out of business or to keep them from even going in the business. And that's my concern, is down the road, not this one thing we're talking about today. The four people, entities, or let's say the four secretaries that the governor's executive order spelled out for the Buffalo River Conservation Committee is appropriate. You yourself, the Secretary of Energy and Environment, Secretary of Park and Tourism, Secretary of Health. As looking at the subcommittees that I believe have not been picked yet, caused me some concern, and I think some other legislators, and it says they will be local landowners, which may mean they may or may not be farmers, that conservation organizations, environmental and technical experts,
Red flag.
Representatives of the tourism industry, local, county, municipal officials, and federal partners. Where is the voice in that for the small farmer? That was concerning to me. In the I believe it was Monday the 14th, DMGAS article that talked about some 400 people submitted comments all in favor of the ban of these concentrated feeding areas. And it talked about the comments in there. It suggested restrictions from prohibiting small hog farms and barring other types of concentrated animal feeding operation. I think I asked you if poultry was part of that. To me, they are small concentrated feeding. I'll let you address that in a minute. And it said only 2 comments opposed any ban. The Arkansas Farm Bureau, which represents these people I'm talking about, that made the statement that no scientific evidence showing animal agriculture is causing an environmental impact, and also stated that letting emotion rather than sound science drive regulation changes.
Stop.
And then the Arkansas pork producers or something.
Okay, so that's Senator Terry Rice. That's a clip from Friday. Okay? Now, this is exactly what your legislature is supposed to be doing. They're providing a check and balance on the power, and they're saying, you know what, we don't think we want to give this money to the governor just yet. We want more information. That's the first thing. The second thing is, folks, The environmentalists on the left are extremely emotional. We know this. They don't. I mean, in the grand scheme of the climate change situation that we know about, and we've got kids that don't think that they are going to live for another 5 years or 12 years or whatever. They're scared to death. What's the motivation here? What's the actual motivation? And when you say, well, environmental groups are for this, okay, well, that's a huge red flag because environmental groups don't know how to farm, a lot of them, okay? They're not landowners. They don't understand that a landowner has every incentive in the world to be a good steward of that land because if you ruin it, then you can't use it anymore. So they need to be very careful with who is involved, who's actually pushing these new regulations across the Buffalo River watershed. Now, what happened on Friday? Well, after Senator Rice spoke and, questioned Ag Secretary Wes Ward, then it was Senator Missy Irvin's time to speak. And she was a little bit more direct. Let's see if you agree with me. Let's listen to what she had to say.
Senator Irvin, you recognize?
Hi. What counties does the Buffalo National River run through?
I've got a map. So we've got Boone, Searcy, Newton, Marion. Maybe it's the north side of Madison. Searcy, Newton. It hits.
Ag Secretary.
My map isn't very clear.
Ag Secretary.
It's Searcy, Marion, Baxter, Newton.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you visit with any of the elected officials that represent those counties before you decided to create a Buffalo River Commission or this program? Did you or the governor's office visit with any of us that represent those counties before you decided to do this? Yes or no?
Not particular on the change.
No, you did not. I represent Searcy County, Marion County, and Baxter County. You never once had a conversation with me. My constituents live in these counties. They called me when they read about this in the newspaper. The fact that you have landowners and not residents of these counties listed is a problem because there's a lot of people from all across the state that own land in these areas. But those are not necessarily constituents or residents of those counties. That's a huge problem. And the fact that y'all single-handedly did this without discussing it with any of us who are elected to represent this area, who work through these issues with our constituents, with the Buffalo National River on a daily basis. We have been through so much on these issues, and we have tried so hard to work through it. It is incredibly disrespectful. It is ridiculous that this happened the way it happened. We are elected, duly elected people, sitting here in this crowd in front of you. And you did not visit with any of us about this. My Senate District 18, I wish you would put a map on top of your watershed map. I'm not happy about it. Mr. Chair, at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion to hold this until a meeting with the elected officials that represent the Buffalo National River and the watershed and the districts and the people that are affected that live here all the time can meet duly and properly with you and the governor's office. And that is my motion at the proper time.
Thank you, Senator.
Stop.
I have two more people in the queue, and we'll come back to that motion.
Well, well, well. Now that is a surprise. I mean, not really. You know, one thing to say about land, they don't make any more land. You start to mess with people's land in Arkansas, they're going to get pretty mad. What do you think? And that's exactly what's going on here. Now, what I would like to know, I would like to push this further. And I mean, you know, Senator Terry Rice, Senator Missy Irvin, they make fantastic points. Senator Rice is saying, what about the small farmer? How's this going to affect them? Are they now going to have more regulations? Well, yeah. Are people going to be able to start new businesses in the area? Well, we need answers to that, okay? And what Senator Irvin said, they haven't discussed this with him. This is just kind of executive fiat that this has been done. That's a good point as well. But what I want to know is, who has the ear of the decision makers at the top? Because if it's anything like the ruckus that was caused to get C&H Hog Farm out of the Buffalo River in the first place, I can tell you, you can go and research this. Some of these groups were connected to radical environmental crazy people. I'll just say it, And so I'm not saying reasonable protections or not, okay, but what's reasonable? Who's defining that? If a George Soros-funded group is fine, they don't want anybody to do business. And, we're talking about messing with people's livelihoods here, okay? You're talking about these constituents that live in these areas. You're talking about messing with people's livelihoods, messing with people's money. And that is the main reason you're actually seeing this. But I would even go a step further, because I posed this question to you last hour. I think it's very interesting that the Arkansas General Assembly here, even though it's only $1 million, but they're standing up to the governor during this interim session, standing up to what he wants, and I haven't seen this too often. This hasn't happened very often from the legislature, at least not publicly. Maybe it happened during the highway debate where they got the general revenue funds that they wanted, but I haven't really seen this happen publicly. And so, why do you think that is? Now, I asked you that question, and I think it was Reggie on Facebook that said this. Hang on, where's Reggie? I can't find the comment now. Anyway, he said something about how they must not be afraid that the governor's going to primary them and throw them out of office. Meaning, we've had several instances where the governor picks a Republican to primary a Republican he doesn't like, and then they lose power. And this has happened time and time again. Now, filing is kind of is going to start in November. Filing for office. Once filing closes, there'll be a lot of Republicans that'll know whether they're safe from a potential Republican or ASA-backed Republican opponent or not. And so maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. It kind of got me thinking, in the 2021 session, will we see more people willing to not do what they're told from the higher-ups? I mean, I'm not going to hold my breath on that because I probably would die. I like living, but it's still a possibility. I don't know. Tell me what you think. The telephone number 870-275-9799. Coming up at the bottom of the hour, we'll be talking with Dr. Michael Packo on the Arkansas economy and the U.S. economy. Don't go anywhere.
As we speak, Beijing is employing a whole-of-government approach, using political, economic, and military tools as well as propaganda to advance its influence and benefit its interests in the United States.
And I have wanted to welcome back to Arkansas Chairman Chu. Please give Chairman Chu a round of applause.
China is also applying this power in more proactive ways than ever before to exert influence and interfere in the domestic policy and politics of this country.
Chairman Chu, I got to know as he is the CEO and chairman of Shandong Ruyi Technology Group out of Shandong Province.
Over the past 17 years, China's GDP has grown 9-fold. It's become the second largest economy in the world. Much of this success was driven by American investment in China. And the Chinese Communist Party has also used
exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the program. Thank you so much for being with us today. I want to remind you, in keeping with this, in keeping with our news that we covered on Monday from over at talkbusiness.net, they sat down and they did an interview with the Arkansas Secretary of Commerce, whose name is Mike Preston, who, by the way, during the break, you guys actually are listening to this mashup that we do of Vice President Mike Pence. We're contrasting Mike Pence and the administration's stance on China versus Arkansas's stance of, I don't know, does Arkansas have a treaty with China or something that I don't know about? Somebody said that in the Facebook comments, which you can't have, by the way. That's unconstitutional. But, I mean, I'm just wondering, is there some sort of agreement that I don't know? But anyway, the Commerce Chief says here that he's putting the brakes on Arkansas's, that the trade war has kind of put the brakes on some of these Chinese projects. But he doesn't discount it. So he was asked by Roby Brock about Rick Crawford's comments, critical of China. Okay? I found this really interesting. I know that China is the second largest economy in the world. We need them to continue to be prosperous. They need us to continue to be prosperous. I'm very confident in the companies that we've located here that they're not a security threat to Arkansas or national security. Quote, I feel pretty confident in that. Do we have this cut? Go ahead. I want you to listen to this real quick. This is, again, talkbusiness.net, Roby Brock asking Arkansas Secretary of Commerce about Congressman Rick Crawford's critical comments about how the Chinese communist companies are not here to help us. Listen.
Money, but things have really kind of been in a holding pattern.
Representative Crawford has spoken on the record about his concerns about Chinese investment in the U.S. and in Arkansas in particular. I think 3 projects are in his congressional district. Yeah. As a matter of fact, are his concerns warranted, the things that he's brought up?
You know, as a member of the Intelligence Committee, I'm sure he sees information that I'm not privy to, so he knows things that we don't. I know that China is the second largest economy in the world. We need them to continue to be prosperous. They need us to continue to be prosperous. I think the sooner that we can come to a resolution on this trade war, and obviously the intelligence concerns that the Congressman Crawford have are part of the issues that the Trump administration are trying to address. Hopefully those get addressed in these negotiations, and it's not a concern. You know, I'm very confident in the companies that we've located here that are not a security threat to Arkansas or to our national security. So I feel pretty confident in that.
Stop.
You mentioned that things have slowed down.
How could he possibly know that? How could he possibly know? Out of your depth. Out of your depth doesn't really begin to describe it. I mean, think about this. Roby Brock. So Congressman Crawford has been on record. He's been critical of some of these Chinese deals, some of them in his district. By the way, Congressman Crawford has said he's all for economic development, just not with the Trojan horse communist Chinese. I'm paraphrasing his remarks. And Mike Preston says, well, you know, I mean, he's on the Intelligence Committee and he sees a lot of information that I don't know, but who cares about that? It's probably irrelevant. He answers the question by admitting that Congressman Crawford has a bunch of information because he sits on the Permanent Select House Committee on Intelligence that he doesn't have, and then dismisses it and says, quote, I feel pretty confident. Quote, I'm very confident in the companies that we've located here that they're not a security threat to Arkansas or our national security. I feel pretty confident about that. Ho, ho, ho. Everybody rest easy now. Rest easier now. The guy who said to the Chinese communist officials who came over here during one of their announcements, these are your state representatives and state senators now. If you call, they're going to answer. Hey, I got news for you. By the way, if a Chinese communist official calls a state senator or state representative, first of all, you now have to report that to the State Department. That's a new rule that came out last week. Second of all, call the FBI. That's what I'm saying. Maybe we should just call the FBI and let them know that these deals are going on anyway. Maybe they don't know. Who knows?
Arsenal of policies inconsistent with free and fair trade, including tariffs, quotas, currency manipulation, forced technology transfer, intellectual property theft, and industrial subsidies that are handed out like candy to foreign investment.
We've been to Shandong province a number of times since I've been governor. We've called on people, and Chairman Chu gave us the opportunity to meet with him at Ruyi, at their technology group there in Shandong, and saw his incredible facility. We asked him to visit Arkansas. He did. So Chairman Chu, we're delighted to have you here. I'm excited about signing this agreement with you, and I welcome you to Arkansas.
These policies have built Beijing's manufacturing base at the expense of its competitors, especially the United States of America.
And I wanted to recognize Chairman Li to my right, who is the founder of Sun Paper of Shandong province in China. I also want to recognize Secretary Ma of Shandong province.
As President Trump said just this week, in his words, we rebuilt China over the last 25 years.
Last November, as you know, I traveled to Shandong province. I met with Chairman Li. I toured Sun Paper Company along with Mike Preston. While in China, we signed a letter of intent on behalf of the state of Arkansas with Sun Paper, indicating that Sun Paper wanted to put a major bioproducts mill in South Arkansas,
The Communist Party has set its sights on controlling 90% of the world's most advanced industries, including robotics, biotechnology, and artificial intelligence. To win the commanding heights of the 21st century economy, Beijing has directed its bureaucrats and businesses to obtain American intellectual property, the foundation of our economic leadership, by any means necessary.
Chairman Li and I met yesterday. Chairman Li indicated to me that Sun Paper has selected Arkadelphia in Clark County as the location of a $1 billion bioproducts mill.
Beijing now requires many American businesses to hand over their trade secrets as the cost of doing business in China.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program this morning. So we got some new economic numbers, some new jobs numbers, employment numbers that came out a couple of days ago. So I wanted to turn to Dr. Michael Packo. He is an Arkansas economist extraordinaire, if you will. Also with the UALR, Arkansas Economic Development Institute. Dr. Packo, how you doing, sir?
Oh, fine. Thanks for having me on, Paul.
Absolutely. So you have this this blog post and a blog site. I want to encourage everybody to go to arkansaseconomist.com, because this is a place where you kind of give your thoughts in written form about what's happened with the job numbers that come in every month, isn't it?
Well, that's right. It's kind of my nerdy place to go talk about the numbers. So if you're interested in following some of those details, I encourage you to take a look at it.
So we are actually, we're throwing this page up on the website right now. We have this back on October the 18th, Arkansas employment and unemployment, September 2019. So what stands out to you, Dr. Packo, about these new numbers?
Well, I think one of the things that's interesting is that every month the news media trumpets the change in the unemployment rate or lack thereof, and this time around was no different. The unemployment rate increased from 3.4 to 3.5%, and one of the things I pointed out in my blog here is that that change is really only due to the fact that they rounded off to the nearest tenth, that for really all practical purposes, the unemployment rate was unchanged. As a matter of fact, if you carry out the calculation another digit, it went up from 3.44% to 3.46%, so 0.02%. The change in the number of employed and unemployed was really minuscule compared to the labor force of nearly 1.4 million. So basically, the news was no change when it comes to employment and unemployment.
Yeah, so I see the graph right here that you have on there. It's pretty good. The green line is the official rate, but if you just don't do the rounding, then it pretty much stays the same. And so, that's certainly important. So, I mean, that's obviously a good thing, right? Record low unemployment is a good thing for the state.
That's right. That's really the story here, is that the unemployment rate is low and continues to be below 4%. Statistically speaking, all we can really say is it is below 4%. And has been there for a couple of years now. So, but that's good news. That's certainly nothing to complain about.
Talk about this. Some of the underlying numbers here. The household survey about the number of employed. That says there was a decline there.
Well, yeah, 552 as an exact number out of 1.3 million was the decline from August to September. So, and then similarly, the number of unemployed went up by a grand total of 233. So, again, in the scheme of things, those numbers are basically zero. Now, for about the past 3 months, in the household survey, we've been seeing very little, if any, change in the number employed and unemployed. We're kind of on a plateau at this point, it would appear.
Yeah, it does seem that way. I'm seeing this, local area unemployment statistics. It's pretty much the same. And then the labor force, and I guess the national unemployment rate. What about the national unemployment rate?
Well, the national unemployment rate declined by 0.2 last month. Again, the magnitude isn't necessarily all that important, but I guess what it means is now that the U.S. and Arkansas are exactly at the same place with a point estimate of 3.5%. So conditions nationwide mirror those in Arkansas, where very few unemployed. There's still a residual portion of the labor force out there that dropped out over the past decade, and so we still have some room to grow if those folks end up being lured back into the labor force. But as far as people looking for a job, they're pretty much jobs are plentiful.
I'm going to go back to that the article here in a minute, but by the way, it's ArkansasEconomist.com. But can you maybe remind us, for people maybe that weren't paying attention during the recession, this whole concept of dropping out of the employment force?
Well, right. You're in the unemployment statistics, you're either counted as employed or unemployed and looking for a job. If for any reason you're not actively seeking employment, go back to school, retirement, discouraged, then you're simply dropped from the sample altogether. And so we saw about 5% of the labor force disappear over the course of the Great Recession and its aftermath. Part of that was expected. Baby boomers are retiring, leaving the labor force for good. But here in Arkansas, we saw about 2 percentage points larger decline than in the rest of the country. And I think a lot of that had to do with the evaporation of manufacturing jobs that were dispersed around the state. And we're seeing a little bit of a resurgence there, which is good news. But, there's still some slack out there of people who simply aren't counted in the employment and unemployment statistics from the household survey. On the payroll side, it's different. We're seeing growth there. When we ask employers to report the number of hires they've made, we're seeing pretty good growth on that side of the ledger.
Yeah, I see here the payroll employment, the report on non-farm payroll employment for last month showed an increase of 1,600 employees from August to September. That's got to be a good sign. So what industries are we talking about there?
The real strong ones over recent months have been, healthcare. That's been pretty strong for several years now. Again, demographics drive that. Baby boomers are retiring, requiring more healthcare. cetera. And leisure and hospitality hiring was up also, especially in accommodation and food services. Business and professional services has also been one of the stronger areas in this economic expansion, but that's shown considerable weakness in recent months, largely in the administrative and support services area, which a lot of temporary workers are there. So if we're seeing a little bit of slack in demand for workers, that's probably the first place it would show up, where employers are not hiring as many temp workers.
I also see construction here is one of these, and I feel like that's a good sign. I will remember anytime, I have these little random bits of information that pop into my head about previous political discussions, but I remember back when they were trying to build the Keystone Pipeline under the Obama administration, people were talking about how many jobs it would create, and the president said, well, yeah, those are just construction jobs. They're temporary jobs. And I was just like, well, that's what the entire construction industry is. You always build something and move on to something else.
That's right. It's temporary until the next project comes along. But there are some big projects going on in the state right now that's helping to support construction employment, and also the weather matters too. For the time of year, we had some pretty good weather in September. That helps keep construction workers on the job and keeps things moving along. And both construction and manufacturing were areas where we saw a lot of weakness during the Great Recession and the early years of this expansion. So the fact that we're seeing positive year-over-year growth in those two areas is a really good sign.
We're talking with Dr. Michael Packo, Arkansas economist. We're talking about these recent numbers that came out. So all in all, I mean, I'm looking at just this line here, the non-farm payroll employment, and really just all the graphs are pretty much, they're trending in the right direction. They're trending where we want to see things go. And I think we might have talked about this last month. There does seem to be some people on the political spectrum, they're kind of hoping the economy takes a downturn so it'll affect the 2020 election. Have you heard this philosophy?
Well, yeah, that's always a factor. I think political bias sometimes comes into play when economists are looking at the outlook for the economy. And if for no other reason, just to speculate as to how it might affect the upcoming elections. There are some signs of weakness, at least in the national economy. The spreads on different maturity of bonds, for instance, things like that. But here in Arkansas, we've seen fairly steady, albeit modest growth since about 2014. I really don't see any big shocks on the horizon. Of course, those are sometimes very unexpected. So, unless the national economy turns down and pulls us down with it, I think continued modest growth is the outlook for Arkansas.
Yeah, and that's definitely got to be a good thing. So can I ask you one more question on the national front of things?
Sure.
These record low unemployment numbers for minorities, and you also mentioned manufacturing. That's making a resurgence. This is something that people have looked at as something that needed to be corrected for a long time. And I know it's speculative, but why do you think now? Why do we have these record low unemployments in minority communities now?
Well, I think it's really record low unemployment across the board. And so this is an expansion in which pretty much everyone is experiencing some of the benefits of economic growth. Some other measures, wage growth, compensation, may not be as robust as we'd like to see, but at least it seems that those who are seeking employment are finding jobs. And this expansion is now the longest on record, over 10 years long, and we're still experiencing positive growth. So that's great.
Folks, if you want to see what we just talked about, but you want to maybe see it in written form because you didn't just remember everything that we said, you can go to arkansaseconomist.com and check it out. Now, Dr. Packo, do you just update this pretty much once a month based on the numbers, or are there other updates throughout the month?
Well, about once a month I update the employment numbers. That's when they come out. I also have a report on the metro area employment. There are personal income, personal consumption expenditures, just about any government statistic that comes out that has some bearing on the Arkansas economy. I try to work that into the ongoing narrative of how are we doing.
Yeah. Well, I just want to encourage people to go there. It's a great resource. I'm glad you made me aware of it as well. And we look forward to talking to you again next month, sir.
Oh, that's great. That's great. And also on the Arkansas Economist site, you can find information about the upcoming forecast presentation, November 14th, and you can sign up for that. So
I see that right now. This is Arkansas Economic Forecast Conference, correct?
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Okay.
It's co-sponsored with the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis, the Little Rock branch.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'm looking at this right now. November 14th for breakfast to hear from experts who will give updates on economic conditions and the outlook of the region and the nation. Okay, great. Okay, well, yeah, absolutely, folks. It's ArkansasEconomist.com. You just click on that tab, Arkansas Economic Forecast Conference, for more information about that coming up November 14th. Dr. Packo, we appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you for having me.
All righty. Have a great day. Folks, we're going to take a break. Be back here in just a moment.
It also coordinates and sponsors the acquisition of American firms to gain ownership of their creations. Worst of all, Chinese security agencies have masterminded the wholesale theft of American technology, including cutting-edge military blueprints. And using that stolen technology, the Chinese Communist Party is turning plowshares into swords on a massive scale.
Well, thank you all for joining us via Skype from Beijing this morning. Here in Beijing, it is 10 p.m. in the evening. I've had a very successful trip to China.
China now spends as much on its military as the rest of Asia combined. And Beijing has prioritized capabilities to erode America's military advantages on land, at sea, in the air, and in space.
I've spoken at Tsinghua University here in Beijing, which was a treat for me to speak with young Chinese students about Arkansas, and also to talk about the relationship between China and the United States.
China wants nothing less than to push the United States of America from the Western Pacific and attempt to prevent us from coming to the aid of our allies. But they will fail. Beijing is also using its power like never before. Chinese ships routinely patrol around the Senkaku Islands, which are administered by Japan. And while China's leaders stood in the Rose Garden at the White House in 2015,
in a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
Hi. What counties does the Buffalo National River run through?
I've got a map, so we've got Boone, Searcy, Newton, Marion.
Maybe it's the north side of Madison.
Searcy, Newton. I think it hits, my map isn't very clear.
It's Searcy, Marion, Baxter, Newton.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you visit with any of the elected officials that represent those counties before you decided to create a Buffalo River Commission or this program? Did you or the governor's office visit with any of us that represent those counties before you decided to do this? Yes or no?
Not particular on the change.
No, you did not. I represent Searcy County, Marion County, and Baxter County. You never once had a conversation with me. My constituents live in these counties. They called me when they read about this in the newspaper. The fact that you have landowners and not residents of these counties listed is a problem, because there's a lot of people from all across the state that own land in these areas. But those are not necessarily constituents or residents of those counties. That's a huge problem. And the fact that y'all single-handedly did this without discussing it with any of us who are elected to represent this area, who work through these issues with our constituents, with the Buffalo National River on a daily basis. We have been through so much on these issues, and we have tried so hard to work through it. It is incredibly disrespectful. It is ridiculous that this happened the way it happened. We are elected, duly elected people, sitting here in this crowd in front of you. And you did not visit with any of us about this. My Senate District 18, I wish you would put a map on top of your watershed map. I'm not happy about it. Mr. Chair, at the proper time, I'd like to make a motion to hold this until a meeting with the elected officials that represent the Buffalo National River and the watershed and the districts and the people that are affected that live here all the time can meet duly and properly with you and the governor's office. And that is my motion at the proper time.
That was Senator Missy Irvin on Friday, lecturing the Arkansas Secretary of Agriculture, Wes Ward, on, well, you heard it right there, just how they don't think this $1 million should go to the governor quite yet, because they have a lot more questions about the regulations and how it will affect landowners here in the state of Arkansas. Yesterday, I understand that Governor Asa Hutchinson had an announcement about supposedly a new 1,200 jobs. So that's interesting. A company that specializes in IT outsourcing, expanding its presence in Arkansas. Governor Hutchinson and DXC Technology announced Tuesday that they're going to establish a global center of excellence to serve Medicaid businesses in 30 states. Now, that is interesting news. A global center of excellence to serve Medicaid business in 30 states. These 1,200 jobs will materialize sometime over the next 3 years. So, sometime over the next 3 years. The new positions will be in healthcare and life science and automotive and IT services. Quote, a large part of the mission of the Arkansas Economic Development Commission and this administration has been to sell out to China. I'm sorry. The actual quote is to recruit high-paying, high-tech jobs to the state, and we're thrilled to see DXC expand in Conway. This is happening in Conway. When an existing business chooses to reinvest and expand, you know there's something special happening. This was the announcement in Conway yesterday. Here's a flashback article. February 14th of 2018. FBI chief says Chinese operatives have infiltrated scores of naive U.S. universities. When we were talking a few weeks ago with Brigadier General Robert Spaulding of the Hudson Institute, where he talked about how the Confucius Institutes, which are Chinese outfits to monitor, Chinese nationals who come over to make sure they don't get too capitalistic or too Americanized, that these universities have given a lot of money. But if they're given a lot of money by China to kind of keep quiet, and they're naive about it. I mean, I just wondered, that naivete, is that spread into local and state governments too? I mean, on Tuesday, this was, again, February 2018, FBI Director Christopher Wray told the Senate Intel Committee that China has aggressively placed operatives at universities, whether it's professors, scientists, students. It's every field office, not just major cities. It's small ones as well. The FBI is watching warily. This was back in 2018. What do you think they're doing now? I wonder if the FBI is reaching out to local, not just local universities, but are they reaching out to local business owners and telling them what's going on when it comes to this infiltration? Folks, I'm not making this up. And the reason you might think I'm making it up, because if this is true, it would mean that the higher-ups in Arkansas and, in the governor's office and the Arkansas Economic Development Commission are just so out of step with what's actually going on. I mean, continuing to, embrace China. Now, listen, I know they're saying, some of these deals are on hold, but I want you to understand what a big deal it is that the Secretary of Commerce, Mike Preston, came out on Sunday and said, yeah, we know there are concerns, and we know that Congressman Rick Crawford is on the Intel Committee, and he's warning against doing business with China, but we feel pretty confident. Wait, what? We feel pretty confident that we've selected the right companies. That doesn't make any sense. Come on, you know what I mean? Is somebody going to say something other than me? Am I the only one that's going to say something about this? Or is Congressman Crawford the only one that's going to say something? Obviously, his opinion on this carries a lot more weight than mine does. Somebody else needs to say something. I mean, if anything, it would be a big deal if people were like, you know what, we saw the light. We realized that doing business with the Communist Chinese is a giant national security threat. We're not going to do it anymore. I mean, that's all you have to say. Be done with it. We're terminating our deals. They're not here to help us, okay? All right. So you need to get into Troy. You need to, so you build a horse. We could build this really giant badger. Oh, man, who appointed you king? Because some watery tart threw a sword at you? No, you put the soldiers in the Trojan horse, and then it's a gift. Oh, the Chinese are giving us a gift. And we let them in, and then they slaughter us in the middle of the night because that's the story, right? It's a Trojan horse. We need to say thank you, but no thank you. But instead, we're welcoming this foreign investment from China, which is a member of the WTO, under developing nation status when they can afford to spend billions of dollars in other countries like Zimbabwe, Mozambique, and Arkansas. And by the way, in all those other instances, they bribe the politicians first before they go in to get what they want. And so we should be asking, why would the Chinese treat Arkansas any different? Oh, by the way, but the State Department, again, the State Department has their new rule. They issued it last week. If there's any Chinese officials in America or Arkansas and they want to talk to the local or state government, they now have to make the State Department aware of the meetings and conversations that they're having with local and state officials. That's now a new rule. Okay? All of these signs, they're warning signs, flashing lights, red flags. We just need to stop this. We'll see you tomorrow.